In this episode I share how I woodburned a Canadian goose on a slice of birch. Hi everyone, I'm Anna, and this is actually the first bird I attempted pyrography. I started with some dark details on the head and the beak of the goose with a very small ballpoint pen tip. There was one dark spot on the wood next to the eye, but I placed the sketch in a way that it would disappear in the dark feathers on the head of the goose. After I burned in those really fine details with a ballpoint pen tip, I switched over to a small shader. This whole project I use only two shaders, the small one and the medium one. The medium pen tip produces a bit more smoother results, but of course it also is bigger. So I switch back and forth between the two where I see fit, but of course feel free to use your own favorite pens. For the white patch on the cheek, I first marked the jagged outline of it by just tapping lightly with the sharp edge of the shader. Then I switched to the medium shader to start on the dark feathers of the goose's head. Just like graphite drawings, darker burnt sections shines a bit more than lighter areas. I try to minimize the glare while filming by adjusting my lamp and my camera angle. I make small zigzags with my pen to imitate the texture of these small and compact feathers. I planned on doing this project for several weeks now, but I was a bit anxious to start because birds have a different approach than the animals I have experience with. To boost my confidence, I tried some textures and pen movements first on a separate piece of wood before I started. Sometimes you see me rotating the wood or even turn the piece upside down. That's to keep the pen in optimal position to produce the marks that I need for my goose. To look at your artwork in a different position from time to time also helps to spot possible mistakes a bit better. I also go lightly over the white and light areas of the goose to give it some texture as well. If you leave it unburned, it just looks as if you forgot to burn it. Later I add some white accents on this piece anyway, so stay tuned for that. I was a bit intimidated by all the feathers. There are so much details in this piece that I easily lost track of them. Paying attention to the placement of all of them was the most difficult part. There were so much moments that I hesitated that I just sat in my chair, stopped burning for a moment and stared at the reference next to my artwork. It doesn't seem that way if you watch the video, because I cut all of that out of the footage to keep it pleasant to watch. If you're a perfectionist like I can be, it's easy to get upset if the placement of some of the details isn't exactly as the reference. But try to let it go, it doesn't have to be exactly the same. You already have a photo, so why create a copy? As long as the feathers follow the shape of the bird and when you have a pattern that looks like feathers, you did a great job. One of the biggest challenges for most people who try birds for the first time, I think, is to make feathers look like feathers instead of hair. Feathers overlap each other, a bit like scales. And in many cases, also with this one, they have a lighter edge, so they are clearly distinguished. Also they have a bit of a jagged edge, they are not perfectly round. So if you can imitate that in your artwork, you can create realistic birds. This is quite a small piece. This slice of birch is only 21 centimeters in length, that's about 8 inches. But the tail feathers are a bit longer than the ones on the wings of the goose, so I can show you in a bit more detail how I approach the feathers. It's a bit darker in the areas where the feathers overlap. I drag the pen from the dark shadows into the light. At the end of a stroke I flip the pen a bit upwards as a plane that is taking off, if you know what I mean. That way you don't have those start and stop blobs, but you create a nice gradient instead. Although this is the first attempt of a bird with pyrography, this isn't the first bird I made in general. That doesn't mean it wasn't a big challenge for me. This artwork also has a reflection in the water. I like to challenge myself and do things I haven't done before. I love these types of pictures with water reflections. If you want to challenge yourself, choose a subject you're passionate about, then you'll have a higher chance of succeeding. I was terrified to start on the reflection. I liked the way the goose turned out and I didn't want to ruin it with the reflection. In the reference, the whole reflection is a bit darker than the goose itself. I started with the neck. When I had that in place, I was a bit shocked actually. Suddenly it had a big dark blob on the surface that looked totally out of place. So I let it rest for a bit and started fresh the next day. Instead of sending it all off, I decided to keep on going. That was the right decision because the more I added, the more it came together. I just didn't have enough context yet. That's quite often the case, also with other art mediums like paint or pen and ink. The first few strokes can feel strange and out of place until you filled in the surroundings. The reflection wasn't easy, but it became less difficult when I changed my way of thinking. Instead of thinking I was burning a reflection, I tried to just imitate an area of abstract shapes and different values. I used the goose above a bit as a reference for the placement, because it was a little bit off from the photo reference. But water is changing every second, so it doesn't matter. There's one bit in the reflection that looked a bit off. I don't know if you can spot that part in the video. Somewhere in the center where you have a ripple in the water. That was a bummer because I couldn't adjust that anymore. But I, again, kept on going and in the end I just darkened that section a bit more until it blended in a bit better. Honestly, now that I have the finished piece next to me, I can hardly see that mistake anymore. when I finished the wood burning part, I wanted to add some white accents to make the goose really pop off the surface. I'm using a white colored pencil. Luckily I could buy this one single pencil in the art store instead of a whole set, because this is one of the most expensive brands out there. But it stands out beautifully on the wood and it says it slides fast, so it should not fade away very soon. The good thing about colored pencils is that you can layer light applications on top of each other and that it doesn't cover up the burn completely. So you can still see the shadow parts and the texture that I burned on the cheek and the light feathers underneath. And that's basically it. I really like how this turned out. It sounds a bit funny, but my favorite part about this piece is the beak of the goose. I think I will hang this in my studio. Please subscribe for more creativity with art and photography and let me know what you want to see next. Or simply post a goose in the comments down below if you watched this till the end. Have a nice day, until next time.